Okay, so today we're going deep on Pablo Escobar.
Okay.
You know, a name that I think anyone who's alive during the 80s and 90s probably has at least heard of.
Definitely, yeah.
He was pretty synonymous with the drug trade in Colombia,
Yep.
Particularly cocaine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And built up such a vast empire that it's
Almost impossible.
almost impossible to even fathom, you know?
You think you can grasp it, and then you dig a little deeper, and you're like, oh, wow, there's a whole nother level to this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, it's really something else. But
Mm-hmm.
what I think is really interesting is, you know, was he just this ruthless criminal, you know?
Right.
Or is there more to the story?
Well, that's what's so fascinating about Escobar. I think his story isn't so much a clear-cut good versus evil kind of thing. You know,
Yeah.
he was born in 1949, just a small town in Colombia. And his life was just this like meteoric rise to power.
Yeah.
But it's all intertwined with, you know, this legacy of violence and manipulation.
And, you know, looking at some of the research that Starplay Studio has done, it seems like, you know, this rise didn't just come out of nowhere.
Of course not. No.
There were a lot of socioeconomic factors in Colombia at the time
Absolutely.
that really kind of contributed to
his rise.
to his rise. Exactly.
Yeah.
So to understand that, I think we have to start by looking at the Medellin cartel, which is the criminal organization that he basically headed.
Yeah, he was the head honcho.
Yeah. And it's incredible, this cartel. They controlled something like 80%
80%. Yep.
of the cocaine that was coming into the United States.
It's insane.
It's just an insane amount. And it wasn't just about, you know, moving drugs. It was about the wealth.
the power.
Yeah, the power, the wealth. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking like $30 billion.
Yeah, an estimated net worth of $30 billion.
Just incredible amount of money.
Yeah.
But
And the consequences of that operation, the scale of it is just mind-boggling.
yeah,
But the consequences of it were absolutely devastating. I mean, we're talking thousands of lives lost. Yeah. Police officers, politicians, innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. I mean, just an absolute tragedy.
yeah. So then it's kind of strange to think about, you know, the other side of Escobar, like this guy who cultivated this almost Robin Hood-like image.
Yeah.
You know, we see evidence of him building homes and schools and hospitals for these poor communities in Colombia.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, you know, was this just random generosity?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. You know, what we see from the research is that this generosity, as impactful as it may have been, was a very calculated strategy.
Okay.
So essentially, he was manipulating public perception.
I see.
For those who felt neglected by the government, Escobar positioned himself as their savior, you know, as a provider.
Right.
So this giving back, you know, along with the violence, created this very complex and contradictory image of him in the public eye.
Yeah. I mean, some people might see it as like twisted philanthropy and other people might just see it as pure manipulation, like you said.
Exactly.
It's hard to reconcile these two sides.
Absolutely. And, you know, that manipulation played a key role in his rise,
Of course.
but it also played a role in his downfall.
Oh, how so?
Well, when the threat of extradition to the U.S. emerged, which, you know, basically meant facing trial in a foreign country,
Right.
he basically declared war on the Colombian government.
Wow.
And it wasn't just about avoiding prison, it was about maintaining his grip on power, even if it meant unleashing this reign of terror.
That's chilling.
It is. It's a very chilling reminder of just how far he was willing to go.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, bombings, assassinations.
The stories are unbelievable.
Yeah. It's almost unbelievable that this was actually happening in Colombia.
Oh, it's a dark time.
It was. And then, of course, you know, famously, he escaped from prison in 1992,
Yeah.
like straight out of a movie.
It's like something you'd see in Hollywood, you know?
Right. Exactly. It was a dramatic escape for sure.
Yeah, but it was only temporary, obviously.
Yeah. By 1993, he was cornered by Colombian forces in Medellin. And
That was the end. He was killed in a rooftop shootout.
wow, what a way to go out.
Yeah, very dramatic end to a very dramatic life.
Absolutely. And I think it leaves us grappling with this, you know, this legacy of Pablo Escobar,
Of course.
a man who was both this brutal criminal mastermind, and yet for some people, he embodied hope and defiance against a system that they felt had failed them.
Yeah. It's a very strange duality.
It really is. And I think, you know, what's really thought-provoking is the lasting impact of his actions.
Absolutely.
You know, he built his empire on cocaine and fear,
Yeah.
and the collapse of it left just this indelible scar on Colombia.
It did, and unfortunately, you know, these themes of the drug trade's corrosive power, the allure of wealth and power, that
Right.
blurred line between good and evil, these themes continue to resonate long after his death.
Yeah, it's a story that really makes you examine not just the individual, but the systems and the circumstances that allow figures like this to rise and fall.
It really does.
So what do you think, what resonates most with you about Escobar's story? Is it the duality of his persona?
I think that's a big part of it.
Yet is the socioeconomic factors that fueled his rise, or the enduring consequences of his actions on Colombia and on the world?
All of that. It's just such a complex story.
It really is, and it's a story that I think we can all learn something from.
Absolutely.
So for more deep dives into complex and intriguing figures like this, don't forget to follow Starplay Studio on all platforms.
That's right.
Chaotic scenes at the funeral service for Pablo Escobar, drug trafficker, billionaire, killer, but a hero to thousands in his home city of Medellin. The guns that surrounded him in life surrounded him in death, though brandished now by the military that hunted and shot him. His mother and family grieved at the open coffin. It was a careless telephone call to his wife and 2 children on his 44th birthday that betrayed his hiding place. His wife, who'd unsuccessfully sought asylum in Germany this week, had to flee the church, protected by more than a dozen heavily armed men. Escobar, who had the blood of hundreds on his hands, died almost defenseless, trying to escape across a rooftop. He'd been shot repeatedly by troops who had surrounded the 2-story house. The authorities say they tracked him with electronic equipment, programmed to recognize his voice on the telephone, equipment supplied by the United States. The Colombian president says the killing is a massive step towards ending the drug trade. This killing is the biggest single blow to international drug trafficking in a decade. But it does not mean that fewer drugs will find their way onto the streets of Britain and America. Authorities expect other drug cartels will simply take over Escobar's business. The king may be dead, the cocaine trade is not.